Sure. Alrighty, guys. So we're at 5 past. And as always, thank you so much for showing up. These team chats, you're used to my spiel here, which is that they are athlete driven. So we have these when everybody feels like it's a good idea for us to get together and cover a topic. And it's designed so that we can get to know one another. We can go through some topics here and there that we might not otherwise get to, but also I ask you to participate because I want everyone to have a little bit of a voice. So with my team, as you know, I am the leader of the team and like to teach you as many skills and as much knowledge to be the best athletes you can. But I also really value how many great athletes and how much knowledge and experience we have on the team. And so I like to have these in particular when we talk about these topics for everyone to share, because everyone has some great information to share from one another. And that's what I love about the team app as well, the WhatsApp, is that I really trust everyone to give great advice. And I know that we all have, good experience and good things to share with one another. So, and it was really cool. We were just talking a little bit to start, is when we go to group events and like something as big as the World Championships, like we saw in Kona, is everyone is so great about connecting as a team. We really saw that spirit we see the spirit at some of the races. We really see it at the, big event like Kona, where everybody's supporting one another and making a, connection to get together and cheering for each other on the course. And it just makes it so that not only do we just grow so much more as athletes, right? Because it's a combination of support and knowledge. So I just want to thank you guys for that and show my appreciation for that. So some pretty cool stuff. Volker was in Kona, congratulations. And Jenny was there as support crew, which is awesome. And then we've got lots of people actually on the team. Before 70.3 Worlds, I'll put out a little thing, but there's a huge contingent going to St. George 70.3 Worlds. So that's going to be really, really cool. And cool to see everybody going. Now with the team chats, I have kind of been like that old grumpy teacher that's been harping on everyone to post their topics that they would like to bring to the table, right? Because this is a conversation where we're all meant to be, if we were in person, we'd be hanging out at the table and talking shop. And this is the one area you all fail me. No one ever, you all want the team chats, but no one ever brings any topics to the table. So hopefully you have some things a little bit you want to talk about tonight. However, I have an agenda for us, so don't be too afraid. I do have some things that I want to talk about. Really briefly at the start, I want to hear from Jenny and Volker and Kona. It's pretty amazing. As soon as the race is finished, both men and women's, I said, man, that was just so fast, right? I mean, we won't spend too much on this topic because I have a big agenda and some things that I want to cover, but how incredible to see the sport moving in a direction where, 740 for the men's, and that's just incredible. I know that and Jesse and I and Elliot did a podcast on what might be contributing to those things. Obviously, I've had conversations with some of my fellow peers like Cameron Brown and Justin Dare and that, who are standing on the course out there all day, and the differences from when they were racing. And, the conditions come into play, the race dynamics, the depth of the field, those kinds of things. But just so cool. Like on the amateur end, we're seeing people just going faster and faster. And on the professional end, just watching the sport grow and get faster. And that's what it's supposed to do, right? I mean, it pushes us as athletes. It inspires us, absolutely. And it also pushes us, the coaches that I've chatted with afterwards, it pushes us as well to continue to always look at our athletes and our programming and the races and say, like, how can we go faster? How can we make sure that our athletes are stepping up to this level and, continuing to be inspired? So really, really cool. Was there anything that you noted being there, Jenny, watching the race? Because I know sometimes when you watch a race, you're right there on the field, that you would have taken away from, like, even watching the women that you'll be competing against at some point, right? Like the things that are different, or that, you're just noticing in general there?
I didn't really notice anything in general, particularly with the age group women, you know, especially old ladies like me, you know, they're, I didn't really see a lot of, we were watching, you know, crewing for Barry and Eddie and Volker and some of the faster people. And so I didn't see a lot of the women that would be in my age group, you know, finishing or on the course, because we were ahead of them all the time watching the guys. So that I can't really speak to anything specific that I noticed with respect to the women. The one thing I did notice with the men, and there's been some articles published about it, is, you know, that jamming the things down their jerseys to make them more aero, and the big helmets, and the, you know, just the change in technical equipment, you know, to try to get a more aero advantage. I think, you know, that probably comes into play for sure at the speed that those guys go. And I think this year the crosswinds were pretty manageable, and that I'm sure was helpful. Volker can probably speak to that more specifically, but I did hear from several people who raced that said, you know, the crosswinds really weren't like they are normally, you know, and so that was probably helpful. And the morning of the swim, the water looked great. So,
Yeah.
you know, I love swimming in the ocean. So for me, that's never a concern, but, you know, it did look nice and pretty nice and tame that the morning of both mornings of the races. So, but you know,
Volker, how about you being out there on the course? Was there any noted? I mean,
I was worried about the swimmers, as you probably know, because I couldn't wear a wetsuit. But actually, the buoyancy of the water was fine, and the swim itself was fine. I was late for the start, as you know, also, but the swim itself was just fine. On the course, the bike course, it was my first time, so I can't compare it to other crosswinds, but it wasn't. It didn't bother me the winds. I mean, coming back on Thursday, we had a little bit of headwind, and I think that was a difference to Saturday. Saturday, I think they had a tailwind. On Thursday, we had a little headwind, but the crosswinds were fine. They were all manageable. It wasn't a big thing. The heat was more of the issue, and then on the run, that was my major problem on the run.
Yeah, I think, you know, the big changes of having the women's only day and the men's only day, there's so many logistical changes with the sport. The wave starts, there was less aid stations at this race, more competitors on the course, the depth of the competitors on the course. So all of these things too, as we move forward and work towards these races, like, well, you know, people are going to be able to reflect on how did this go this time around. And then as they head to, you know, Kona or different races, as the sport changes and evolves, we're going to be able to adjust, you know, racing strategies, things that you need to consider, you know, even the athletes heading to 70.3 worlds, it's knowing, like Volker was caught off guard with how logistically difficult it was a little bit with the waves in the morning. And so it'll be similar probably even at 70.3 worlds of being really early and aware of your surroundings, what's happening with the waves, because he missed his wave start, you know. And so these are all changes that are being made. It's positive in that, you know, they're giving more space on the course, and you're getting cleaner starts and you're getting to race your actual competition. However, you know, you do have to adjust for that as far as being there, you know, early on time, being prepared, being aware of what's happening. I know that just to touch on 70.3 worlds as heading into it at this time of year in St. George, it could be quite cold in the morning. So you're going to have to be prepared for that, the air temperature in the morning. And it could be quite windy this time of year. I mean, I can tell you just being in Tucson and Arizona, really close to where the race is, you're not geographically that different. And it is on any given day, it can be calm, but on any given day, it can be so windy. Like the last 2 days here in Tucson, they're ridiculous winds. And so we can sort of like, you know, look for those types of things as well. But, you know, I think with Kona, they'll have learned a lot this year. Ironman itself will have learned a lot. The competitors will have learned a lot. I think they'll see some changes from that. And I think it was really special and really cool to see everybody go so fast and to see the 2-day racing and how that's working out. So good stuff. So, all right.
I thought that, you know, as far as the 2 days from a spectator perspective, it was actually nice because you could get in closer to, you know, cheer people on. The crowds, like the crowds at the finish line weren't near what they were normally. And it was kind of sad, the crowds at the finish line on Thursday night, because I always make a point to go down and see the, you know, midnight finishers, whether I'm participating in the race or there to cowbell. It's just kind of my thing. And it was kind of sad that on Thursday night there was hardly anybody there. And I'm sure it was because the vast majority of the people that were spectating were either already, you know, their athletes were already finished, and, you know, you've got this couple hundred that are still coming in the last hour, or, you know, last couple hours. And then, but then all of the people that are there to support the Saturday racers, they're not going to want to be up till midnight. And of course, the Saturday racers aren't going to want to be up till midnight. So you didn't have any of those people there cheering on the women's race at the end of the night, which I thought was kind of a bummer. That was probably the only downside that I saw, other than, and this is my only, just my speculation, because I'm, you know, what a heavy sweater I am, and I know how to manage in the heat, but I'm skeptical as to whether I would be able to survive the heat with the aid stations so far apart on the run. I don't know if that would, if I could keep cool enough, because I, you know,
definitely need
I
to
can,
carry you have to carry your own, and
yeah, I mean, I would have to carry stuff, I guess, because I, you know, I lose 7 pounds in an hour if it's hot, you know, of fluid. And so I just, I mean, I don't think I could have sustained 26 miles in that heat with the aid stations so far apart.
yeah, that's
I carried an ice bag it's about that size, filled it up with ice in each aid station. It lasted me till the next aid station, and then it was, I could refill it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's usually what I do, you know, in those hot races. I'll dump ice in my hat, put it down my, you know, down my skin suit, down my back, but it's always all melted by the time I get to the next aid station. I'm not as fast as you.
From an Endurance Nation sells them. They're material, the water leaks out, but it pretty much holds it together, but the water leaks out slowly, so you can cool yourself, at least for the 1.5 miles. Walking most of the time was fine. But yeah, that's what I did.
And that's just speculation for me. I don't know, maybe I could do it, but it just, you know, having raced there before a number of times, it's hot. And I mean, I'm like every aid station taking everything I can get, you know.
They'll need to adjust for that for sure, but at least athletes will have a chance to be more prepared now. So
yeah,
well, let's move on a little bit from Kona here. And the main topic that I wanted to talk about, and very appropriate to right now, and actually a transition from this, is essentially the fourth quarter of the year. This is always the hardest part of the year for athletes, because there's a number of athletes on the team who are still racing. There's still some really important races coming up, right? There's Ironman California, there's Indian Wells, there's 70.3 Worlds, there's Cozumel, there's all kinds of races still happening in the fourth quarter. So you've got a group of athletes that have been going a long time all year and have a huge amount in their bodies already and need to remain focused through this final quarter. So that's like one case scenario. Then you've got a group of athletes who maybe didn't have a front end heavy season or a lot going on through the year, and this is the prime of their season, and they're really, really excited to race and hit some of their A races. And then you've got another group of athletes where they're pretty much done their year. They're checking off into off season, and they're starting to like wind it down and start to look towards next year. So this is that time of year. Plus, usually for people at this time of year, their jobs are also a little bit like that, where there's like some year-end stuff starting to come up. The holidays are starting to come up. If there's families with kids, there's also people where like kids are in school and, you know, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of sort of moving parts in the fourth quarter of the year that aren't the same as the middle part of the year. So I really wanted to talk about, you know, just bring it to people's attention. One, as far as part of the team, we want to make sure that we continue to encourage and support everybody that's still racing. So even if you're done, continue to support and encourage everyone that has big races coming up. You know, maybe some people have their big half Ironman of the year or even their Ironman of the year, and continue to support the people who have been racing all year and maybe are feeling like the load of the year. And they're thinking, man, I've still got a few things that I want to achieve to finish out this year strong, and they're feeling the load of it and they need that extra support from their team. So make sure that as teams, obviously I'm doing that as a coach, but as a team, we rally together and make sure that we're showing that support and that you're not just sort of checking out at towards the end of the year. That's a common thing that you'll see this time of year where everyone's in a little bit of different places and people either are sort of like checking out or they're not as excited as the start of the year or the middle of the year. So I sort of made a list here. It's like who's done, who's not, show support, and make sure we handle that fourth quarter as collectively as a team where we really get behind everyone. So even putting in the like WhatsApp, like who's racing, what races, and connecting with each other. I know there's a fair few going to Indian Wells, and like I said, there'll be a big contingent at 70.3 World. So that's really important. The things to note about that, if you are, as we are in this point in the year, is that knowing how much you've done already this year. And so the support from others, but also knowing, hey, I know where I'm at this point in the year, and take a mental note of that. Am I really fresh and excited and I haven't really raced that much this year and I'm really just gearing up and loading up towards this back half of the season? Or am I an athlete who has been racing and training all year and I need to fine tune things to finish out the season strong and understand what the load is going into this back half of the year? So that is an understanding of how you're going to feel fatigue wise, how you mentally might be needing to adjust things. And also just your training will look really different from other people, right? Like someone who's fresh and this is where the load of their season is, that they're training into their back half of the seasons is going to be really different than someone who's done a whole bunch of a whole bunch of stuff at the start of the year. Larry's like, I'm out of here. His training load looks very different than Sarah's training load at the moment. That's probably, so that's definitely, you know, something to consider. So then mentally, as we come into this part of the year, as you do finish up, what is going on over there? There's this t-shirt and oh my goodness, those guys crack me up. The knowing where you're at mentally and
Larry won bingo. That's what just happened.
Oh my God.
He's very excited.
He won bingo. That's awesome. I'm glad they're
he said he's also gonna win. He's gonna win worlds also. So
he's gonna win worlds. But if he already won bingo, so he's already winning. Oh
well, I also won bingo earlier, so we're both winners.
Oh my God.
Actually, we can just forget about going to Worlds. So go ahead.
You just won bingo. That's all the luck you need. Oh my God. That's awesome.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, so you could be there mentally as well, where bingo is more important than Worlds. I get that. But so yeah, so that is a big part of understanding, you know, where we're at in the fourth quarter. And where that leads into is if you've all been with me for a little while, which a lot of you have, and some of you are newer, is at the end of the year, we always do a year-end debrief. And you really do want to wait to do that until the whole year is done. And what I mean by that is I know that we sort of bump into Christmas and holiday season and gets nuts for everyone, but there is really no pressure around that time of year. If you go into, and I'm going to share my screen, if we go into, my gut on my website, I know most of you don't really feel the need to go on the website very often anymore, but there is, even if you go on the guidelines and forms page, there's that year-end debrief form, and it just allows you, and at this point as athletes, especially seasoned athletes, everybody debriefs their year differently. However, if you're not really sure how to do it or just need some like guiding points, that form just helps you walk through some guiding points. And if you use all of it, great. If you use only pieces of it or you have a different version, that's totally fine with me. But the important part is to not just look back at what happened just this last couple of months, but we really will go back through the entire, like look at the year and say, where did I improve? What are the things that went really well? What are the things that we really want to keep building on? What are the things that we want to work on through the off season, make those lists? But I feel like it's important that we continue to support everyone right until the race season's done. And that's really right until Indian Wells, that first week in December. And then take a little break it up. So we have the last race of the season, and then we have a small break that bumps us into that whole Christmas time. And through that time, you're mentally having a little bit of a break, you're enjoying family. We do the run challenge, you're doing some other things. And that's the time you can start to sort of dabble into on your free time when you're just sitting around like, okay, I'm going to set 15 minutes a day aside for the next week and go through this form and reflect on the year. And then once we're into that first and second week in January, that's when we start to reflect on that stuff and build our plan towards the next year. So I just wanted to give people some guidelines on when that looks like. And you might even be starting to do it now if your season's done and you're starting to plan your next year. But you can really say, like, the race season isn't quite done yet, and how can I support my team? And then as I reflect on my own year and start to plan my next year. So I don't know if anyone has a lot of us have been racing for a long time. And for me, I feel like over the years, it is important to break that up like that. You know, if you just roll right in from the season ending to no mental break at all and no reflection right into, oh, we're right into the next year, then that can trickle into where there's some fatigue early in the next year. So I wanted to address this topic on this meeting so that everyone has a clear understanding as the season comes to a close on how to mentally approach it, and even just logistically how to approach it. Say like, okay, I'm not even going to look at that debrief stuff until we start to hit December, beginning of January, and start to plan. I know that some of you have to start to sign up for your races for next year because they fill up, and that's okay to start to look at that and say like, what does this logistically look like? But save the deep dive until the year really does end. So what's some additional feedback, comments, experiences that people have on that? Remember, I'm the mean teacher that if people don't talk, I'll start picking on you and asking you. Nicole, you're here in Tucson and you're prepping up for 70.3 Worlds. And you know,
currently have my Normatec boots on.
She has her Normatec.
I'm multitasking. We're doing some recovery at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess, I don't know. I definitely find the reflection really helpful to take the downtime kind of at the end of the season. Otherwise, I know personally, I definitely end up with that fatigue early on in the next year. For me, I really like to look at like the whole picture, like the sleeping, the nutrition, like the work. I think, you know, going back to almost like the intake form that I filled in with you when I first started, and like, is that still realistic with like the number of hours that I can actually train in a day? You know, and versus like my personal life, like there's always that like ideal of what I think is achievable versus like the reality of what I can actually get done. So I think just being realistic. I'm also really hard on myself. So I think just also giving yourself a bit of grace through that process, which I'm not very good at.
Yeah, and that's part of the reflection right there, right? Is just like understanding where your strengths and weaknesses are, right? Like it's a strong suit to work really hard and have really good work ethic and have big goals that you get after. And you understand that it's a weakness if we're a little bit too, like you say, you need to know when to give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit too critical or hard on yourself and not allow the, you know, the good things to shine through so that you learn from the good experiences and build on that momentum. So that's even in itself part of the reflection that as you make these notes. So I think it's important to take time on the reflection as well, because if you just do it all in one sitting, you know how it is like anything, you think of something again later. So that's why it's like, if you've got a few weeks at the end of the year, maybe you start the process, and that idea of like 15 minutes a day over a week, you might think of new things. We forget what happened in January, February, March, April, May, June, right? Like we don't even, it's like, what actually happened? So you might even go back through your training logs and look at some of your notes, look at some of your numbers, all of that stuff. Where, you know, how did key sessions come together? Where were the actual improvements? And improvements show up in different places, right? They don't always show up in exact data markers or improvements on, you know, times, but they show up in other areas. You're like, oh, actually, I'm much better at this, or I did a really good job of stringing, you know, these number of sessions together, and then this was the result. So taking that time on that reflection is really important. One thing I would like to note for everyone, no matter where we're at in that, and I try and change up, you know, that focus in December, January for us with this structure, is that, you know, we go into a little bit of fun stuff with the run challenge, and then we all start to work towards camp, which allows that really good connection and base building at the start of the year. Whether you're able to come to camp or not, it's still part of like the team dynamic and how the year unfolds. The trainer sessions through the winter, that kind of thing. You know, I think that it's really important, because none of us, I can say this, it's my birthday tomorrow, I turn 45 tomorrow, I can't believe this, but none of us are 25 anymore. Or 21 anymore. Let's say none of us are 21 anymore. As we are a little bit older athletes, it's really important that none of us take huge chunks of time with nothing. Okay. Now, and I was talking to Cameron Brown about this about a week ago, about how important it is. I mean, he's probably one of the most successful longtime athletes. He's been competing at the top level since he was a junior, and he's now in his 50s, and he's still competing as a pro. And so I've been tapping into his brain about like how he's that fast and that successful that at that age over that longevity, you know. And it's just really, you can't afford to take 3 weeks off completely anymore, because then climbing back out of that, it takes twice as long. And also the risk for injury is very, very high. And especially with running. So like an off-season period of time, we might do the end of year debrief and reflect on things and have some different things. But that's where there's reasons I put in place like that run challenge, right? Is because staying on your legs and continuing to run is probably the single most important thing that we can do to keep us building towards the next year and prevent us from having injuries as we build into our more balanced triathlon training in, you know, middle of January, February, March, and then towards our season, right? So it's really important that, yes, your mental focus might change. You might take a step back as far as the energy that you're putting in, as far as structure, or maybe you sleep in a few more days, what we focus on. But we really always want to stay away from that. Well, it's the end of the season. It's easy to get roped into because it's all over the internet. Oh, you need to take 3 weeks off or a month off at the end of the season. And that is really dangerous for any athletes really over the age of 35. You're setting yourself up for a really rough start to the start of the next year, as well as a lot of injury to have to build back from. So that old no zeros that was, you know, created many years ago is a really good thing to keep in the back of your mind as you start to hit towards the end of the season. Does anyone have any like experience, anything that they want to share on that topic in particular, with the, you know, taking too much time off at the end of the season, and things that they've experienced or noticed when they have or haven't on either side? Nothing? Nobody's got anything. So
I mean, I think, well, I do think that staying active is important, like not having the zeros, but I do wonder if some of that can be a little bit, like just a little bit different in terms of the activity that you're doing, so that it's not like if I want to go for a mountain bike ride with friends or like my nephews or something, that I'm still moving and I'm still active, but it's not necessarily following workouts in a calendar, because I think sometimes that's the component that can be fatiguing. So I think it's important to stay active, but maybe not have as much structure for like a 2-week period, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So I love that you brought that point up. So here's the thing that I was hoping someone would bring that up, is that for some athletes, and this is where it's important to note the type of person that you are in sport. For some athletes, having a mental break completely from schedule and having the flexibility to just exactly that, like, I want to go to yoga today, I want to go run today, I want to go mountain bike today, I want to go play water polo. So there's like different things that they do. It's really, really important for their reset point in the off season. For other athletes, if you do that for them, it actually is worse. Okay, so they really need that structure and that guidance to know, hey, this is what I need to do every day, or they just completely will sit around and do nothing, and they actually fall into a bit of a depression, and they actually need that accountability and the continued structure. Now, what they do within those activities, and it looks completely different, obviously, in the off season, the reboot season, than somebody else. But having that schedule, like, hey, I need to wake up and I'm accountable for, I have to do this these days, is not so much like, both of them are mental, right? So it's like figuring out, what do I need to mentally reboot from the season? And so for you, you can know, like, hey, I need 2 weeks where I can just go do whatever I want, because I know I'm going to go mountain bike, I'm going to go do this, and I don't have that schedule that feels tiring for me. For someone else, it might be very tiring and stressful for them to not have a schedule, because that will put them in a place mentally and within their life that is negative for them, and that is a problem. So the reason we bring this up is, what can be important for you as an athlete is to know where you're at in that, right? And what is it that you actually need? And it's different for everyone. So just because for someone they need to completely get off the schedule, and you might read that in someone's blog or someone suggests it, it's okay to say, well, actually, I need this. The most important element of that is figuring out which of that it is for you, and that knowing that no matter what, the goal is to mentally recharge, and we'll obviously physically be working on some different things, that we don't stop completely, but we're physically working on some other areas and aspects that are going to help you keep growing as an athlete and keep you safe from injury and those kinds of things for your next year.
Marilyn, I have a question kind of along the same line, along with Nicole's question. And you're well aware of my social circle here, and the end of the season being Indian Wells for me personally, and for, I've got friends racing in California this weekend, and a bunch of people racing in at 70.3 Worlds. But once around here anyway, everybody's done, it's like, throw your tri bike aside, throw your road bike aside, and everybody gets their fat bikes and their mountain bikes. And we do a ton of single track and riding in the snow and all of that. And last year, I didn't do any of it because of my knee, but this year I'm really itching to get out on the trails, and, I'll have my brace, so I'm protected and everything. And I'm just curious of if, like, I don't mind having the structured plan year round, and I'm a box checker, so I'm gonna do it, but I don't want to suffer the mental struggle saying, oh gee, I can't go play with my friends today because I got to do this run and this bike, and everybody else is out playing in the snow on the single track, and I don't get to do that. And so how do you want me to manage that in my plan with you, to say, I really want to go and ride single track, which is in the snow is a lot of hard work for a long time, and if I'm going to be out there all afternoon, where does the give and take come, and how should I approach that, I guess?
I think that having that stuff in the winter is awesome. So you gain skills, you keep your endurance, right, by getting out there and doing that. It's social, it's huge strength training, which is obviously great in the winter. It's sport specific strength. So I think including that, like when I lived in Canada in the off season, we'd ride the trainer twice a week, but then we'd be out skate skiing and snowshoeing and all of that. And so you're really making use of your endurance and strength with the outdoor sports and the conditions that you have. And the best way to handle that is we include it in the plan. It's like, you say, okay, I know that on Thursday, there's a group going out and we're going to go out for 3 hours on fat bikes. Well, if we know that in advance, then obviously we don't plan anything else that day, or we plan workouts according around that the days before and the days after in that day. Or if we know that, hey, every
Yeah.
Sunday, everybody's going out and skate skiing and I want to go do that in place of my long run, then we include that in the plan. And the most important element of that is just communicating that in advance so that it's not an additional thing that we have to miss one or the other. It's just incorporated in the overall piece of the week and the month. And we know, like, okay, from November, December, January, and I'm just saying, like, for example, every Wednesday and Saturday, there's a possibility we're going to be out on the fat bikes. And so then we say, okay, well, that's great, because we know those are endurance and those are strength, and there's a little bit of skills and there's a lot of fun. And we just include those as your long ride days or your strength days. So we would definitely make sure, and that's important as well for me to know, because it would be very important where the actual gym strength training is placed in relationship to those, as well as
Mhm.
wouldn't do additional big gear work or something that we would traditionally do in the off season. Well, we wouldn't need to, because that would account for it. So the most important element is finding out in advance and then communicating it and putting it on the actual Training Peaks plan so that we plan really smartly around it. So I think one,
Yeah.
including those things like mountain biking, fat biking, skate skiing, snowshoeing, hiking, like all of those extra activities in the winter are great, because we continue to move. They're really good for the off season. And just fortunately, I have experience in all of those and what the impact physically those have and what they have in terms of like the development and the big picture of the whole season. And so we just include it in the plan. And so we manage it through just really, really good communication on that. And you can just literally like
Yeah.
put it in your Training Peaks plan, like, even if it's, you guys all know the rhythm of things. I'm always building the next week at this, you always have that next week in front of you. So if that stuff is put in your Training Peaks in advance, then I can plan around it. So yeah, I think that stuff is great.
The only challenge with doing it in advance for me is, sometimes we plan, oh, we're going to go out and do this tomorrow, and then the weather's shit,
Yeah.
it's sleeting and the wind's
Yeah.
blowing 30 miles an hour, and it's like, okay, yeah, no, we're not doing
Yeah.
that. We're going to do it the next day.
Well, and that's when you would just text me and say, hey, we're not going today.
Yeah.
The weather's shit. And then we would just
Yeah.
move things around in the training plan, just like always, right? Like, so it's just
Yeah.
a good communication piece. And if there's stuff like that that is good for the winter for you, then we just include it, right? So that's
Okay.
that's good,
Well,
and
thank you.
it's, yeah, of course. I mean, that kind of stuff is, like I say, in the winter times in Canada, that's what we would, there's all kinds of different ways. Each athlete's off season looks different. Someone might want to do a huge swim block. Someone might want to include a lot of winter outdoor stuff that benefits them later. And then it's deciding for each athlete, how much of the important stuff do we need to do to keep your progression going, and how much of the stuff that we're doing that's fun is actually a really good contributor to what we're trying to achieve, right? And all of those are. Most of us aren't going to stray so far away from what we do with swim, bike, and run that it's not going to benefit us the next year. I probably stray the furthest away with going into strength sports, right? So like, if anybody knows how to stray away and come back, I've got probably the most experience with it, as far as, okay, how do we balance this and make sure that you're never so far away that you can't pick it up and then continue on to the next season and do really well. So communication is really important with that stuff. Just to continue to sort of scroll through this, you guys saw me share this screen. This is the little guideline that I like to use. Obviously, like I said, there's lots of different ways to debrief the year, and you might have additional things that you like to use, or different altogether, or you condense it to something smaller, but it's a good guideline. I also like to know, if someone asks me, I look at each one of you as I have a team of people who are my boss, right? And so your feedback for me of what, worked really well, or what you might need more of, or what wasn't working for you, is really important to me. And so we continue to grow as a team by not only you know, me telling you like, hey, you did this really great, and I think this is where you can improve, and this is what we're working on to continue to get stronger. And then at the end of the year, you know, I'm not afraid to ask, or even all year, I'm open to that. But at the end of the year, if there are things that, never ever be afraid to say like, hey, this worked really well with the program, or this, I didn't feel like this worked very well, and I'd like to, you know, see things different here. Or, you know, when there was a lot of this, it was working really well for me. When there was, you know, not as much of this, it wasn't. So just that feedback, I'm here to give you feedback as athletes to keep growing. And then also I value your feedback as athletes about where you're at, your perspective, what your needs are, that kind of thing. So I always put that in there. I know a lot of coaches don't. I know a lot of coaches are, it's a one-way voice. For me, you know, I've always been a collective team, and that two-way voice is how we all keep getting better. Because the more I know from you, the better I can do my job. And if it's something that I think, oh, you know, I can figure out where I can get that, or where we can apply it better, or where's the information that might be lacking, and I can go and learn it and figure it out. Or maybe it's something that I have a ton of knowledge on, we just haven't addressed it yet and brought it to you. So I really appreciate that from you as well. So use this form. So one, where we're at in the year, right? Figure out where you're at in the year and where your team is at in the year. Show your team support to continue to finish out the year well. Where you're at in the year, make sure that you take these grace periods as far as finishing out the year strong. Rely on your team. Whether you need to have a little reset, figure out what that reset really looks like for you and communicate that really well. When it's time at the end of the year, go through over an extended period of time your debrief, and then we'll share that together and start to plan the next year. If you're needing to go ahead and get races down on the calendar, just as far as planning for time off work, you know, races filling up, that kind of stuff, feel free to do that, and we can structure that out. But the deep dives, we wait for that. And yeah, I think that sort of gives us some structure and order on how to tackle this fourth quarter, not only as each individual athlete, but as a team as well. So hopefully you guys have found that helpful. The very last things that I wanted to just like sort of like housekeeping for the group, I did a little vote earlier about whether we do Velocity or Zoom for the trainer sessions once a week, for the social aspect of doing a one group ride a week through the winter. I think keeping that Tuesday night group ride as a team is good for us. I get to see you. I think everyone has fun doing that. It breaks up the monotony of doing the trainer all winter on our own. And I think unanimously the higher vote was we'll just go ahead and do that through Zoom, where I can coach you live. Obviously your session will be in Training Peaks ahead of time. I analyze it afterwards. I think you can share in the community if someone wants to be like a Zwift leader and set up, you know, if someone wants to be that Zwift leader that sets up the group ride that night for everyone to race on Zwift. Alex did that last time. He was sort of the appointed person. If we have a couple of those, that would be great. We can also compare on Strava as well. So that can be a place to have a little competition and compete as well. The run challenge, we'll bring that back in December for everyone. I'm working with a new clothing company for 2023 that we can be a one-stop shop. Smash ended up moving in a different direction, that I wasn't able to do a small group order anymore. So as you guys have seen, I've been trying different companies about like what we like. And a lot of them only do cycling kits. So I've been trying to find someone where it's a one-stop shop where we can get triathlon kits, cycling kits, running clothes, and everything all at one place. And we like the stuff. I got a bunch of samples today from a company called, you guys can check it out if you want, Moo Cycling Apparel. So that's where I'm going to be. I'm working out a deal with them for us for next year. The inside tracker at the end of the season, you know, a lot of people have done it and gotten some really good information from it and started applying it and seen some really positive results. So if you haven't done that yet and you still need it, I get all kinds of discount stuff sent to me all the time. So if you're wanting to do it and you need discounts, please don't be afraid to reach out. And if you want to continue with that, always ask about discounts. The partnership is solid there, and we can keep using that. The Magic 5 goggles as well, everyone raves about them and loves them. And so that's why I got a partnership with them. So we've got a discount all year. So if you like those and want those, just same thing, let me know. You can get a discount code. Don't pay full price for that stuff. And yeah, and then coming up as well, we've got camp. And so we've got finish out the year, then we'll have the run challenge, and then we'll have camp again in February. Also, I've had a number of athletes that have wanted to do more group races. And so I got suckered into doing a 70.3 in May. So if anybody wants to come to St. George 70.3 in May, there's a small group of us already signed up. So if that's something that interests you and you're starting to look at next year, and then I'm going to look at maybe another team race, see if maybe there's a group of us that all qualify for 70.3 Worlds in Finland, that kind of thing. And see if we can get a few more races where we're all together there as a team. I know it's hard because we're all over the world and we're all over the country, and logistically sometimes it's not possible, but I'll throw some ideas out there at that end part of the year. And if people want to grab a hold of them, then great. But there's something for everyone, whether it's just the trainer sessions on Tuesday nights, the run challenge, camp, team races. Hopefully, we'll continue with the Zoom meetings here. There's a little something for everyone to always connect. And then there's always the group WhatsApp for us to share ideas and that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of talking this one. Usually I have you guys talk way more, and I apologize for that, but hopefully everybody got a little something out of my goal of this whole session was to shape everybody's mind on where we're at in the fourth quarter, because that can be the trickiest part of the year as far as the most moving parts, with everybody having different things going on. So hopefully everybody took something away from tonight on how to support your team, but also how to think about how I'm going to finish out this year, and then how the end of the year looks as far as debriefing and some structure there. Kelly, you got anything for us? Nothing, just that it's really cold in Indiana now.
Is anybody going out for the Tucson 100?
For L Tour, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's coming for L Tour. I know that there's I've done the Velocity group. There's a big group of them from that coming out to do.
I know. Yeah, I signed up for it. So
oh, good. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah. But I don't think anybody in the group, nobody's told me or expressed that they're coming yet. So if that's something that anyone wants to do, let me know. I have not signed up for it. It's kind of a crazy event if you're a local. we tend to stay away from it if you live here or you dive right in. But if there was a group of us that all wanted to do it, obviously I would. So yeah, any closing thoughts from anyone from the team? Sarah, you're headed to 70.3 Worlds, but you won bingo, so she's probably not even with us anymore. She's not even listening anymore. Anyone else? Kendra, any closing thoughts? Kendra's working towards an Ironman next year, so that's pretty cool.
Nope, sorry. No closing thoughts.
No closing thoughts. And Maria, any closing thoughts from you?
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the Inside Tracker, has anybody at this point gone through the initial testing and then used the recommendations and then gone through subsequent testing and seen positive, negative, no results?
So a number of people have gone through the testing and have been applying the recommendations. I haven't had anyone actually retest yet again to see what the results are from doing it. I will say that I was in contact with them, about my own results as well. And then I even consulted with another physician who is a trusted physician in our community about the results, and they were all in line, like everything was in line with one another, and the recommendations were good. So I feel confident in the information that they're giving us, and I feel like it's a good thing. Like, it's expensive, but I feel like it's good information. What I like most about it is, yes, we can go to any of our physician and ask for those panel of tests and get the results. But then we're always left with then what do we do with this information? And what
Right,
I like
yeah.
about the Inside Tracker, and the reason I partnered with them, was because they actually give you a plan, like, hey, do this every day, and it gives you an accountability on the tracker to be tracking it. I can see it, everything, and then we can go ahead and retest through the year and say, you know, am I feeling better? Am I sleeping better? Am I recovering better? Am I performing better? You know, are these changes in health and performance all coming together the way that they should? And most importantly, the health ones are, I mean, performance, yes, but also there's been some people who have found out some pretty important health issues that I think might have gotten, you know, brushed under the rug for a long time. Instead, now we're proactive early on. And I think that that's a really good thing. So
I also wonder how much of, like, when I go to a physician and they like put me in a normal range,
yeah.
I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's normal for like a wide range of people. But as an athlete,
Yeah.
is that actually normal, or is that low? Or, you know,
Well,
so I think that there's like,
yeah.
That's a constant frustration I've had,
Yeah.
you know, with local doctors is they look at me and they're like, you know, first of all, they think I'm a freak. And then they're like, you know, nobody your age does this stuff. What's the matter with you? And then they're, you know, and then they're like, you're the healthiest person I've seen. There's nothing wrong with you. When in fact, you know, there are some things that need to be addressed, you know, and I tend to get that, oh, you're thin, you're, you know, active, blah, blah, blah. But then
Your heart
my
rate's
A1
too low, right?
oh
yeah,
yeah,
your heart rate's too low. And then my A1C's off the chart. And they're like, well, I don't know why this could be possible. You know, you're healthy. And I'm like, well, but you're a doctor, you should know this, you know.
It is. And that's the nice thing of all of the data that they collect is from athletes. And so the ranges that they're giving you are from a collection of actual athletes versus just, you know, people who aren't as active as us, and they're not trying to compare an apple to an orange. It's like, okay, this is your group of people and this is what we're comparing you to. And so that's, you know, I agree that it's important to work with people that understand all the differences. And is even like you'll find, you know, your liver and kidney and all of that, those markers are going to be really, really different as an athlete, which could come across as alarming in some ranges. However, if you just did a really hard workout the day before or 2 days before, it's going to change those markers. And there's actually nothing wrong with you. You're just recovering from a hard workout. So it's important to know that stuff. And I think that this will help with that and help everybody's overall health and catch things that could be a problem and let things go that people might be being put on drugs for that actually aren't a problem. You know, it's just like, that's normal for athletes. So yeah, good stuff. All righty, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I talked so much this one, and hopefully, as always, you found this somewhat helpful, even if you only took one thing away from the hour that you can apply to this back half of the season, then great. Please show your support for everyone finishing out the season. And I will tell you, it's been an incredible season. Everyone has absolutely off the chart been doing great things. And I would love to see everyone finish it out really, really strong. I couldn't be more proud of this group. And so much so I've gotten comments from other groups consistently saying, man, your group of athletes has really stepped out up a notch this year and been performing consistently just so well across the board. And so that's a real kudos and hats off to everybody's hard work and consistency, and you know, how you're going about your training and then towing the line and all of that stuff. So really, really proud of you. Let's keep that up right to the end of the year. Let's show support for everyone. And thank you so much for coming tonight, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Marilyn.
We'll talk to you all
See
soon.
everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
See ya.
bye.
Bye.